Hello and welcome to the GW4 Preview for Champman FPL. So, has anyone come back that bought Fowler last week? Really unlucky if you did that. Looked really good in the sim data, didn't it? But I think we all know by now that rotation can happen in games like that. We'll all get stung by it at some point, so don't lose heart. If you bought in Fowler last week and it didn't work out, it's just the way it goes sometimes. It will happen to us all at some point. It's just one of those things. We move on. There's a long way to go. But at least he stayed on the bench, didn't he? He didn't come on for a point. So if you had, hopefully anyone that did bring him in had good backup on the bench. If you captained him, hopefully you had a good vice. So it's a lesson. If you hadn't learnt it already, you need a strong bench in this game. You need to consider who your vice captain is in this game. Stuff like that can happen. So just got to move on from it. Borough were disappointing as well, weren't they, last week? Home against Charlton, fancied them for a few goals. But again, that's how it goes sometimes. It was a bit of an anomaly, that one. Borough was the big letdown from the sim data, really. 3 of the top 5 players we looked at last week got a return. So from the top 5 players from last week's preview, Salakovic got a goal. Petkov got 2 goals. Did he? Yeah, I think 2 goals. Ruud van Nistelrooy scored. Gordon ended up at left back. So as we talked about last week, scratched that one off. So I wasn't sure where he was going to play. And Littmanen did score from Fowler's position just to rub it in. So we could, if Fowler had played, we could have got 4 out of 5 there maybe. We got the Liverpool clean sheet, we got the Chelsea win, we got the Bolton win. Veron's sim data came good. He looked the pick of Man United's midfield, and that came to be true. In fact, all of the top 3 United players we looked at last week all got something. So that was almost bang on the average of the sim data, really, what United did. So all in all, a good week for the sim data. So let's see what we can do in week 4. Okay, so first up then, we've got Bolton versus Leicester. So Bolton looked good in this one. 1.6 goals a game for a team like Bolton. That's pretty good. Leicester less than a goal a game. Decent amount of clean sheets for Bolton. 14 wins out of 20 is really high for a couple of what will probably be mid-table teams. This looks like a really strong favourite, really. Bolton attacking returns look good. The likes of Pedersen, Wallace. So let's look at what players actually did do well. As I just said, Pedersen and Wallace, 10 returns each. Almost identical. Pedersen 1 more goal, and Wallace 1 more assist, but pretty even. Those front 2 really did boss it, to be expected, really. Gardner can do stuff as we looked at last week, and that came good as well, didn't it? Last week we said Gardner's expensive for a reason, and he really did tear it up on Thursday night. But in this one, it looks like a short list. The front pairing look the way to go for Bolton this week. But as I said, a good amount of clean sheets. So Gardner would have got a few assists over the Sims, and plenty of clean sheets as well. Okay, so that's Bolton Leicester. Just leave that a minute for anyone that wants to pause it and capture it. Okay. Charlton Everton. So Charlton have been pretty dismal so far, in sim data at least. They got a decent result away to Borough, against the odds in game week 3. But for this one at home to Everton, they look all right. 1.8. Again, for a team like Charlton, that's pretty high. Although they are shipping a few as well, to be expected, I guess, over a goal a game for Everton. But Charlton, look, they've got 5 here. They've got 3, a 4, a 4, another couple of 3s. So we've seen even in the games that they've been losing, Charlton are capable of scoring goals, aren't they? They lost 3-2 at home to Man United, for example. So at home against a weaker side, maybe they'll be all right for some goals. That's what the sim data shows. From what we've seen from them so far, that would, for real, that would back it up as well. 8 wins out of 20. Low clean sheets for both. So fancy of both teams to score in this one. Player data. So for a game where Charlton look good for goals, no surprise, Yule comes out on top. 14 returns, that's pretty high. Brian Hughes as well, for a more budget option. He's the pick of the Charlton midfield, really. We haven't seen it yet, but he is the pick of the Charlton midfield in my opinion. And this is a game where he can show that potential, I think. And Kinsella, so maybe his 35-yard screamer against Man United, maybe it wasn't a fluke. He's come up with a few here as well. From an Everton point of view, Kevin Campbell, small amount of joy. Okay, that's Charlton Everton. Chelsea Blackburn. So as you'd expect, Chelsea favourites to win, 1.45 goals. So not huge, not as big as Bolton or as big as Charlton. Although Chelsea are favourites to win, Blackburn are one of the better away sides. The tactics they play, they don't invite themselves for a beating as much as some other teams do when they go away from home against a better side. So they are capable of a result, or at least not getting hammered too hard. So a few clean sheets. They've also got some games here where they've scored some goals. So as I say, the way they play away from home, they don't invite a beating as much as some other teams. They are capable of scoring away from home. They're one of the better away sides, Blackburn. And it can make for some mixed results. So Chelsea winning less than half the games, 9 out of 20 still isn't bad. Blackburn 3 out of 20, so a few draws. So as I say, Blackburn capable away. We've got a 2-2, a 3-3, a 2-3. So yeah, Chelsea favourites, but I wouldn't be rushing to sub out Blackburn players if you've got plans for them in the longer term. Top players, so Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank again came out on Sims, but as I said last week, that's all well and good, but he just isn't nailed. So I think he played game week 1, didn't play game week 1, played game week 2, and then didn't play this week. So who knows whether he'll play or not. It'd be all well and good if you knew he was going to play every week, but you just don't. So you can almost strike it off. But Johnson did well, pretty good, and Carboni. First time Carboni's featured as as actually looking really, really promising for returns. So over the season, he's going to probably be Chelsea's top midfielder. So he was always going to crop up here sooner or later. And this week here he is. In terms of Blackburn, Bent. Isolated up front in a lot of the sims, so any chances Blackburn did get tended to fall to him, but it could just as easily be Janssen isolated up front in that position. It could well be a game where Blackburn only played one up front, so whether it's Bent or whether it's Janssen, hard to say. Okay, Ipswich Leeds. Leeds look good for this away from home. So we talk about home advantage is a thing in this game, but this is one where Leeds are just a bit too strong for Ipswich really. 13 wins out of 20. 0 clean sheets for Ipswich. Again, they haven't kept one yet, have they? Still a lot of people with Bramble and Hridison in their team. They are good for bonus, but have not looked good for clean sheets so far. They're big favourites from season 1, but they were priced a bit better in season 1. I think they were kind of a free shot in season 1, but because they did so well, they're more expensive this season. So is the bonus alone for these Ipswich defenders worth it if they're not going to keep clean sheets? I don't know. It's a question mark for me. So don't look good for a clean sheet again, Ipswich. Leeds scoring over 2 goals a game in this one. They've scored every single time in 20 fixtures. So could be a good matchup as far as Leeds are concerned. So one of the reasons that might happen is, I know we've seen in other away games Leeds don't look so good for a goal. So Liverpool away, for example, in week 1 we said looks like a low scoring game. Looks good for Liverpool defensive bonus, but in this one Ipswich are a lower rep team, so Leeds are willing to go away and attack this one. So this is how I'd expect them to set up. And you'll see. You can just about see here Kelly's pushing on. So in the game, even in the game against Sunderland, the fullbacks were only pushing up to the halfway mark. But Ipswich are that little bit lower reputation where you'll get the fullbacks pushing on that little bit further. You'll have an attacking mentality, whereas against Sunderland it was normal. So Sunderland Leeds, although it looked like a potential chaos game, it ended up 0-0, and we did see in the preview last week there were 4 0-0s I think out of my 20 sims, so that's what happened in the end. But in this one, Leeds will attack the game more than they did against Sunderland. And in terms of the top players, Robbie Keane came out on top. So this is where sim data tells you so much. It's more about the positions people are going to play than the individuals. Hopefully, reading between the lines, you'll pick that up from what I'm saying in a lot of stuff. But where Keane was getting a lot of joy was when he was playing up front with Viduka. And in the first few weeks of the actual game, we've seen, I think a couple of times he's actually played up front, and I think we've also seen him playing in that AMC position. So where he was getting a lot of these returns was when he was actually playing up front. So he has done that a couple of times. It may happen again, or it may be Bridges and you may see Keane in the AMC, and you may see Kuehl in midfield, or you might see Keane play up front, Bridges doesn't play at all, and you'll get Kuehl in that AMC position. So it's one to watch. It's one to watch as we get further into the season what Leeds tend to do. But the message to take from it really is Viduka's partner tends to do well, and in my sims more often than not that was Robbie Keane, but it could easily be Bridges. Viduka himself did pretty well in this one, as you can see. Ian Hart, again, you'd expect him to do well. Kelly Kelly no goals, but both fullbacks. So as I just showed you, both fullbacks are going to push on. So potential from either side for that one. But obviously Hart's on free kicks and potentially penalties. So that's probably why we've seen a couple of goals from him as well. From an Ipswich point of view, Holland from centre midfield and Stewart up front. No great surprise there that that's their biggest threat. Okay, that's Ipswich Leeds. Liverpool Sunderland. Liverpool, they got 4-0 there. Careful, lads. Don't want to do yourselves a hernia. Yeah, it's typical Liverpool at home in a favourable fixture. Fairly low scoring win is the most likely outcome, less than 2 goals a game. they're just not that explosive. Liverpool, as I've spoken about before, there are plenty of teams. If you're looking for explosive returns, Liverpool's probably not the way to go. Liverpool are more of a steady team, defensive bonus regularly. They'll probably score a couple of goals, but don't expect to get 20 points plus out of a Liverpool player. But they are likely to win 17 times out of 20. They are likely to get a clean sheet, as they often are likely to at home against weaker opposition, 13 times out of 20. So if you bought Liverpool defenders in last week, as we talked about, you got your clean sheet last week. You probably, there's a good chance you'll get it again this week, and then you're into a double game week. So all good. Top performers, so Redknapp. So again, this is more about the position than the player. This was seeing the left-hand side of the central Liverpool midfield looked good. So sometimes it was Redknapp, sometimes it was Biscan, sometimes it was Patrick Berger. But just in my sims, it just happened to be that Redknapp played there quite a lot. But what we're talking about is the left-hand side of the central midfield for Liverpool. Heskey looked good up front, so the mixture of partners for Heskey, sometimes Owen, sometimes Fowler. Heskey seems to like it, even though Tome is really good in the air. Heskey seems to relish in that battle. A lot of sims where both Heskey and Tome were contesting a lot of headers, and they'd come out kind of roughly 50-50, who would win the header, because they're quite closely matched. But in terms of attacking returns, obviously if Tome wins a header, then he's cleared the ball, brilliant. But if Heskey wins the header, then it's a chance at goal. So Heskey seemed to like that matchup against Tome. 10 returns. And Barnby, again, Liverpool midfield aren't nailed, so I wouldn't pin too much hope on it. The key thing to take is Liverpool are likely to keep a clean sheet. They're likely to win. Heskey looks the pick of the attackers. There could be a lot of aerial duels that he fancies. Man United Villa. Okay, so this one looks really strong. Man United 18 wins out of 20, 14 clean sheets, really, really high. So Villa come into this not really giving themselves a chance. So as I was saying about Blackburn earlier against Chelsea, Blackburn are one of the better away sides because they give themselves a chance. This is an example where an away side just doesn't give themselves a chance the way they set up, and we'll look at that in a minute. 14 clean sheets for Man United, and the game, the 6 games where Villa did score, they only did it once. But having said that, because Villa come into this so defensively, we've got 1 5-0, but there's a lot of 2s and 1s. United don't look that explosive this week. I think this is maybe a week where if you go against Van Nistelrooy as captain and Van Nistelrooy hauls, you'll have been really unlucky. Really unlucky. I think I'm going to go against Van Nistelrooy this week because there are just more explosive options elsewhere, I think. And as I say, if Van Nistelrooy punishes you, you'll have been really unlucky. So let's look at the player stats first. So 15 returns for Van Nistelrooy. So you might think, that goes against what I've just said. But remember, United won, 18 out of 20. So if they're winning 18 times out of 20, of course Van Nistelrooy got a lot of returns. But the thing to think about is his ceiling in an individual game. He's got those 15 returns by getting, one a lot. Rather than getting hat-tricks and braces and 2 assists and all that kind of thing. In an individual game, it doesn't look that great for him. but he would be, a safe pick in terms of getting maybe, one return. Giggs looked the pick of the midfield, so Giggs and Beckham. So the wings looked better this time as opposed to the central midfield. So against Newcastle, Veron looked the top dog. In terms of Newcastle's long ball, it favours the central midfielders. The way Villa are going to set up, it looks to very slightly favour the wingers over Veron, but only just. And York there again. So, similar to Van Nistelrooy, if United are going to win 18 times out of 20, then of course York scored a few goals. So this is Villa's setup then, just to illustrate what I was saying. They're going to set up with a defensive mentality. They're going to press. They're going to have men behind the ball, and they're not even going to bother to counter attack. They're just going to sit in and take it for 90 minutes, basically, pretty much. So that's why United won't really go nuts, because Villa will just soak it up as much as they possibly can, but they're also very unlikely to score. Okay, on to Middlesbrough derby. Righty-ho. Okay, Borough let us down last week. Could it happen 2 weeks in a row? Hopefully not. I really want to roll my transfer this week, so I'd love to keep Boxic up front. I probably will do that because I want to have 2 free transfers going into the double game week, so I can assess what's what. So Boxic has let me down so far, really, but he's going to get one more chance here, I think. Looking at this, 2.4 goals a game average for Borough, really good. 18 wins out of 20. Surely he'll get something this time. They've scored every single time. They've got a 4, a 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 threes, 5 threes even. Yeah, looks good for Borough again. So they were disappointing last week, but maybe they can make up for it this time. Derby under a goal a game, and that's even factoring in. You had a bit of an anomaly here where they hit 4. So take that out, take that anomaly away, and they're struggling a bit, Derby, in this one. Top performers, Cepeda and Boxic, no great surprise. Rickard, Rickard's not going to be back, I don't think. So maybe more chance for Whelan, but even with Rickard playing a lot of my sims, Whelan still did pretty well, coming off the bench, starting the odd game. So maybe one more week for those Whelan holders doesn't look too bad. For Derby, as we've seen consistently so far, in my sims and for real, Ravanelli looks the most likely. Ince and Johnston pretty good. So Ince, I know we spoke about Ince last week and he didn't do anything, but he does look one where he could get something in the favourable games. He's not going to get loads over the course of a whole season, but where Borough have a favourable home game, that's where Ince will get something, maybe, if he's going to get anything at all. Okay, it's Borough Derby. Newcastle Arsenal. So brace yourselves. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but brace yourselves because Arsenal look good to win away from home. 9 wins out of 20, 7 clean sheets. That's not bad away from home. Newcastle aren't terrible, so that's not too bad. But still, Newcastle over a goal a game. A couple of chaos scores. So a 3-3. There's a 5-4 somewhere. Yeah, there it is. 5-4. 3-3-2, 3-1. So Newcastle are capable because just because they've got good players, on the night. If you've got players like, Dyer, Robert, Hughes, Shearer, in any given sim, sort of anything can happen because those players have got such high stats. But all in all, Arsenal good for the win. Good for a few goals. Which is not something we've seen a lot of, is it? But the reason for that maybe is this is how Arsenal will set up. So in last week's preview we looked at how they set up against Chelsea, where they basically invited Chelsea to attack them. They're not going to do that against Newcastle. They're going to attack. They're going to keep their pressing and their hard tackling, but they're going to attack the game rather than sit in. So it looks much more favourable for them. And Henry actually looks good for a goal finally after 4 weeks. So I say in the real game and in my sim data, he's been very quiet. But at least in my sim data in week 4, finally he pops up and looks good for a goal. Shearer not far behind. Again, and as we just looked at, Newcastle, even if they lose, more than capable of scoring, averaging more than a goal a game. So Shearer likely to be involved if that happens. Perez and Tikhonov. So again, the wings for Arsenal looking favourable as opposed to the central positions. But again, the Arsenal midfield is not nailed. Van Bronckhorst, for example, is a good player, but he just doesn't play every week. He's got a lot of competition in there with, Parler, Albertini, etc. But Perez and Tikhonov looked pretty good. So that's Newcastle Arsenal. Spurs Man City. So Spurs 12 wins out of 20. City managed 5 wins. Low on clean sheets for both. Spurs, I expected Spurs to average a few more goals in this game actually, because City are a kind of crazy team, but just under 2 goals a game, which is still not bad. And they have hit 3 a few times, a 4. Only failed to score once, Tottenham. So maybe I'm being a bit harsh there. I expected a couple of 5s, to be honest, but it's not happened. But doesn't mean it can't happen on Thursday. But yeah, they've only failed to score once, to be fair. And City, yet again, we have seen City score 5. So again, I've spoken about this in previous weeks. The way City play, they can do it. Another 4 there as well. So it could be a high scoring game, this one. Again, fancy both teams to score. Top players. So Salakovic came out on top again. I'd expect to see that a lot for Spurs. Interestingly for City, Huckabee seemed to do better than Wanchop in this one. Can't tell you exactly why, to be honest, but it was pretty consistent. He was well ahead of Wanchop in this one. So his Huckabee's matchup against the Spurs defence, he seems to like it. Rebrov did well, Everson did well, Poirier did well. Not sure if Everson will be fit or not, to be fair. But yeah, Salakovic and Rebrov holders, nothing to worry about, looks good. Maybe Huckabee is a differential for this one, if you've got a striker spot you're looking to rotate. Finally then, Watford Millwall. So Watford, this is pretty much as I expected. You've got 2 reasonably evenly matched teams. CM home advantage. Watford look good for the win. just under 2 goals a game. So again, that's really good. Anytime you're pushing 2 goals a game average, that's pretty promising. Millwall just about 1 goal a game. Don't fancy a clean sheet from either of them particularly. So yeah, Watford look good for the win. A lot of 3s, a 4. So yeah, their average is not far off being, well over 2 goals a game, is it? It's just Millwall were able to dig in a few times to bring that average down. But if you look at it in terms of a ceiling rather than average, then Watford have got a good chance of scoring 3, really, haven't they? Top players, Helgeson, loved this one. He wasn't interested in passing the ball, but plenty of shots, plenty of attempts on goal, and 12 goals out of 20 sims is not bad considering the standard of this fixture. Smith not too far behind. So I think one of the pre-season previews, I think it was Luke's pre-season preview. He said that Smith is more of a provider. People talk about Smith as being Watford's best player in terms of a striker, but he is more of a provider, and it's often his partner that does better. So this is an illustration of that, I think, even though there's not too much in it. But you see other sims where someone like Gifton Noel Williams can do really well as opposed to Tommy Smith. Smith is a good provider. And then Petkov, the boy again, he's done pretty well so far this season, which I'm really pleased about. In my team, I know I posted pre-season data about Petkov, and a few people were sceptical. It's like, Watford won't win many games. They don't need to win games. They just need to score a few goals. And it's looking good so far. And wouldn't bet against him this week either. For Millwall, Eiffel and Harris, no big surprise there. But yeah, pretty low numbers. Okay, so have I forgotten to take a screenshot of the top 5 players for the week? So bear with me just a second. Amuse yourselves. I will rectify that because I don't want to do another take. Bear with me. Can hear Strictly in the other room, not missing out there. Okay. Right, so a glimpse into the background for you. So let's just zoom this in. Okay, apologies for that, folks, but here are the top 5 players for the week. So Van Nistelrooy, 15, but as I said, it doesn't look explosive. It's just consistent ones. Cepeda, Middlesbrough scoring more goals per game in that one. More chance of an explosive return from Cepeda and from Henry. Robbie Keane, again, that's more Viduka's partner than necessarily it being Keane. It could be Keane, it could be Bridges. So I know that doesn't necessarily help you, but I guess the takeaway from the Leeds game is they look good to win, they look good to score from goals. So if you don't want to gamble on whether it will be Keane or Bridges that actually plays up front, someone like Harry Kewell or either of the fullbacks, if you don't already have them, Hart or Kelly looked good in that game. And then Jason Ewell, so potentially a bit of a differential this week. Charlton look really good to score some goals at home this week. If you've got a striker spot that you're rotating to target fixtures, could do a lot worse than Jason Ewell this week, in my opinion. So that's it for the sim data. So good luck with game week 4. There's a bit of extra content from me this week if you're interested. So I'll be joining the guys from the Man on FPL podcast on Monday night. We'll be recording a Champman FPL special. So we'll have a look back at the first 4 weeks of the season. We'll look ahead to what's to come in over the next 4 weeks in September and the first week of October to the next international break. And we'll do a few other bits as well. I think they're gonna do a quiz between me and the guys. We'll talk about some other Champman stuff. We might be talking about some general fantasy stuff as well. I'm not sure, but I will be on the Man on FPL podcast on Monday night. So if you have any questions to submit, either for me or for the guys that run the pod for that show, head over to their Twitter page. So it's @ManOnFPL. Have a look at the thread for this week's pod. They'll be inviting questions for the show. So say if you've got any questions, submit it there on Twitter, and we'll answer those on the pod. Give the guys a follow in general. Listen to their normal pod. It's a really good pod. It's fairly new on the block, but as I say, the one I'll be joining will be a Champman special. But their usual weekly pod is a general fantasy roundup. So they cover Sky, they cover Gaffer, the championship game. They cover normal FPL. They cover Champman. They cover a game called Perfect Picks, which is about score predictions. So it's a really good sort of all-in-one place for fantasy games. They do previews of the previous week, a look ahead to the next week, all that good stuff. So say it's fairly new on the block. Do give it a try. Man on FPL. Okay, that's it. Thanks guys, and good luck with game week 4.